All right. I know my sound's going. You want to test your audio there?
I don't know.
Uh,
What's my sound doing?
it seems to be working. I think I turned on the background volume. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live stream. We are talking more about second edition because it is awesome and I'm super excited. Uh, I love that trailer video. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm just I'm really really excited about how the quality of everything about this game is going up. So I'm psyched about that. It's great to have everyone join us today. Let's talk about rarity shifts. We're going to be talking about the cards that transition from going up in rarity. So some cards went from uncommons to rares, commons to uncommons, and then some cards got shifted down. And the reasoning behind each card, um, and just our thought process behind that. So, is there any announcements I should say before we jump into this? Is there anything I'm missing?
For any future leaguers out there, we do have the Future League tournament this weekend. Other than that, I think that's about it.
Yes, that's right. Uh, all right. So, why is this showing black? I love OBS. It just doesn't want to make anything work properly. uh, yeah, for future leaguers, even if you're not part of future league and you just want to play, you'll be kind of thrown into the deep end a little bit and playing against cards you've never seen before. But it should be still a fun time. It's free to enter, and you could win prizes. I always do random giveaways. The more people we have, the more things I give away. So come sign up if you haven't yet. I know Steve's watching, Darren's watching. You're both part of Future League. Go sign up right now. So awesome. Let's jump into this. Let's see if this transition is gonna work. So the first card we're going to be talking about, we got a list of a good number of cards. The first
Oh
one we're
yeah.
talking about is a card going up in rarity. So let's throw it up on screen. We're talking about black screen. It just disappeared on me. That's so weird. All right, I got it. I got it. Uh, we're talking about subjugation strike, right?
Yes. I was like, the way that you said that, you're like, subjugation strike? Is this the car we're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, yeah. This is the card we're talking about. This is the card we're talking about. Moving it up to rare. This I know you're the one who advocated behind this. Uh, you want to talk about your reasoning? Why are we pushing this up to rare, from uncommon to rare?
This one is actually more holistic to Bellum in general. As we did the process, we pretty much pulled out every single card imaginable as we started to work on second edition, and we pulled out the cards we liked. And when we were doing Bellum, when it came to the rares that were here or there, and Subjugation Strike is just an amazing card. It does not get anywhere near the love of how amazing this card is. Like
That's
a
very
card that is free and deals 5 damage. Are you guys crazy? And well, like, and 6 damage at Swift for 16 is nothing. It's nothing to scoff at. It's amazing.
I think it was a card that, um, when we first started testing it, started trying it out. We knew it had good value, but the value add for it, it still wasn't at the same tier as cards like the Angel or what were Angel was the most played 8G, Bolt Shot the most played 7G. You had Chrono Walker, you had a Giant Scorpion. Uh, People still weren't looking at it the same way, and I think and that's why we placed it at the uncommon. But I think that's more of a statement about the community than it is about the card. In comparison to all the other cards, it may not seem that powerful, but in reality, it is a bomb of a card. Like it can do so much damage. I've seen a lot of OTKs come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So first one we put out there. How do you feel as a community? Do you like that shift going from uncommon to rare? Uh, is that something you feel comfortable with, or is that something that you're like, oh, Alex has no idea what he's talking about? Yes, I'm throwing the blame back on Alex. Alex has no idea what he's talking about. And that card should never got shifted. I'd love to hear from the community. What do you think about that? All right. the next card we're talking about, let me get this up on screen. It's great because now I have to like look for every single card, and it just goes to show how wonderfully prepared we are for all of this. All right. I am curious before I throw this off. How many people saw this coming? How many people could predict that Epiphany is moving to rare? Oh, there's no card in this game that has sparked more conversations than Epiphany.
That's fair.
It's interesting. All right. I'm happy that Steve, Darren, you agree that Substrike should have been a rare. Now Epiphany. Now, okay, so just recently, Alex, we had the conversation about should Epiphany be in the game, and I think I brought you over to my side a little bit more with the fact that no deck that runs it really shows a lot of like competitive play. Are you still on that same sense, or?
So I'm a data guy, and like how I perceive things. So it's sort of that's the factor you just said. It's like we haven't seen an Epiphany deck win. How, I don't know, because I've seen them crazy like that. I have personally never built an Epiphany deck. And what does that mean? What does that mean for me? And I believe I'm a very good player of the game, and I don't run Epiphany ever.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means to me.
This is kind of the other thing where Subjugation Strike, in comparison to everything around it, like players didn't perceive how strong it was. I think when it comes to Epiphany, people over perceived how strong it was. They fear it. They think it's super powerful. But then when push comes to shove, they decide with other HEs, they would rather run that Epiphany. I mean, the Subjugation Strike or the Angel, or I don't know what other HEs see a lot of play. Those are the two big ones, right?
Those are the biggest ones, yeah.
So those are the ones people would rather play than Epiphany. Or just not run HEs and run more 7s, right?
Yep, I'm big on the 7s for sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting that even though we're moving Epiphany up to rare, and if you have access to JLAR packs and you still want to get yourself Epiphanies, go get them from there. But I think again it's one of those cards that one or two of them in a deck are extremely powerful. But when you make an entire deck around them, that's when the card tends to not be as consistent as you would expect it to be. Which is weird to say that it's not a consistent card. All right. So those are the two cards that are shifting up to rare. There are other ones. We're going to be getting to those. But now I think we get to a point where the conversation's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more depth to it. Let's talk about Kabus. So we talked about Kabus actually was it last week?
I think so, yes.
Last week we did the versus decks.
And
we told everyone that Kabus is shifting down to uncommon. It's funny because I actually approached Steve-O about this and I told him that we're shifting Kabus down to uncommon. And I did it so timidly, and I'm like, don't be mad at me. I really thought that people would be much more frustrated with the decision of shifting Kabus down to uncommon. But no.
How did he take it?
His response was like, why would I be frustrated with making a card that I need more of? You're making it more accessible. Like, why would I be frustrated about that? And that's exactly what we're trying to approach it at, is this card's one of those cards that it is good, it is strong in the right places at the right time. But the times where it really shows value is when you have them in volume. Running one or two of them in your deck, that's not as good as running 6 to 8 of them.
Mm-hmm. And it's very opinionated. It varies from person to person.
That's true. I don't know. I've run them once. I've only put them in one deck, and that was because I was making a rain deck where all the pieces of art featured rain. And this is one of the few summons in the entire game that actually feature a champion. And comically enough, the next one that came out was Necrolich, and it still features rain.
Oh.
So, Yeah, that's the only time I really ran Kabus. It's not for me, but the people who play them definitely love them and want to get their hands on more copies. So for everyone, and I saw these messages on Discord. If you're looking for the Kabus, uh, soon. Now, we have had this conversation before. I kind of just want to reiterate on that. Do you think that the value of Kabus, the rare version of Kabus, is that value going to plummet massively now?
I don't think so, specifically because there's none for sale anywhere. So hard to plummet a card that people don't have to sell.
Yes. That's the other side of it, is just the number of printings of that card are going to be much fewer than anywhere else. So if you want that particular version just to be a collector, it's still going to be hard.
Yeah. Since Darren's in the audience, I know as soon as you talked about Kabus last week and we're like, oh, well, the full art will be extremely rare. Darren went and bought all my full art Kabuses.
Well played. Well played. Yeah. So one thing that I really liked about our design decision when we're working on second edition is to pay attention to the cards that players need a lot of and dropping the rarity. This is, I think, counterintuitive to... I don't want to call other games out because I don't know what goes behind closed doors there. But I know for myself, when designing second edition, when designing Rays, J, and Beta, the cards I put at higher rarity were the ones that I felt players were looking for, like in high demand of. It made the desire to constantly open packs persistent, but it actually created fatigue. I think that was the big issue. So that kind of rolls into the next set of cards. And I'm only throwing one up on the screen, but the 4 pillars are dropping down to uncommon. Yeah. So I know we had different reasonings. What was your reasoning behind this?
I was gonna say, for some reason, I feel like this was the easiest of them all. I don't know why. Even the Cavs and all that, it just made sense. Like if you wanted to make an elemental deck, and you roughly got maybe 2 per box, it wasn't the easiest to make an elemental deck. Was step 1, and then it was, did this really feel, when you pulled a pillar, you were never upset about it. You were like, cool, this will help me make an elemental deck, but you weren't excited.
Yeah.
You weren't like, yes, a pillar. You're like, it didn't make an exciting moment for anybody. And they took a 4-slot rare slot, so you got that feeling a lot.
Mm-hmm. And then the other side to it that I tried to communicate, especially with a lot of newer players, was they would open up the pillars, get really frustrated, or just confused. They're like, why is this my rare? And then if they had played Magic, I'd be like, it's kind of like getting a rare land where, this card has a lot of value. You just need to dig into it. But it's not the same because these aren't cards that are highly valuable for experienced players, and novice players don't understand the value. It was very much it's a staple for a particular type of deck. If you're not running that deck, it's not that useful. And then there's other cards out there that are much more powerful for that. So yeah, I'm actually really excited to have the pillars drop down to that uncommon slot, and getting players to have more copies of them, making that air deck just a lot faster.
For sure.
Yeah, I actually really like playing my Kun air deck, and I look forward to getting back to that. It's definitely much more of a casual deck now that we have the meta stuff going on. But yeah. All right, so I think the next one we have is within that same theme of just the more copies you have, the more powerful the card is. So putting it in the rare slot didn't really make sense. So I'm going to start with this one because Melissa's Persuasion is one of my favorite cards in the game. It's one of those, it's like Rampage Sauce where it has a lot of depths, a lot of layers and complexity. Novice players can still run this card and get a lot of value out of it. And then experienced players can take their no, will take their experience and amplify this card by doing a lot more unique shenanigans with it. And the cool part about that is it doesn't confuse the novice players. They actually see an experienced player play with it, and they get better playing with that card as they go on. But the thing is, Malicious Persuasion is only good when you're running, I think at the bare minimum, at least 5 copies of them in your deck.
Yeah.
And then on the upper end, you want to run 8 or 9, depending on how summon heavy you are.
Yeah.
Putting those in rares was just silly. It was just silly. How many you needed to guarantee to get 1? You need to buy 2 boxes of J. I think in 7 boxes you would get the 5 you need. The card's not worth that investment. I love the card, and I think everyone should get themselves 5 or 6 of them just for their collection whenever they do play Chaos. But it's not worth that investment.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my mandatory in any Chaos summon deck. What the quantity is, it depends on how big the summon is. If you're relying on a bigger summon to survive, then you need a lot more of them.
Yeah. I think it was really the pinnacle card that made monster decks or the Chaos Titan decks feasible, right?
Yeah.
The Angel Titan deck, it stood on its own because Angel didn't need any additional investment into it. You can just drop Angel, it's good. But then if you run Stone Protector, it just amplifies and it becomes ridiculous. But Malicious Persuasion and Rampage Toss finally made it that even if you took the worst of the good big summons, which was Primordial Force, you can still play with it. You can still make a good deck with it. But then once I switched those over to Lightless, it was a whole other thing going on there. Yeah, any other thoughts?
No, I agree with you on that second half there.
Right.
It definitely just matches perfectly with any summon deck because your summons are going to cost aura. It's an energy cost. It's a perfect deck balancer.
Yeah. This next one, Yamaduta, switching down from rare to uncommon. I think it's a very interesting story between us when it comes to this card because I don't think you saw much value in the card to begin with.
I don't. I've only seen it recently.
Yeah.
I think you made a deck recently with Yamaduta. It was the first time I was impressed with the Yamaduta. That's been the only time. Yeah. One game out of I don't know how many I've had.
And that was only because I was able to do it on Tabletop Simulator and run as many Yamadutas as I wanted, right? It really showed that this is one of those cards that excels being in that swarm state. Having so many of them at your disposal that you can just drop them whenever you want. If you're just pulling them 1 per pack and you're getting them so rarely. Yeah, it's in the same boat. Now
so how I saw it before, like to me it's just like, okay, cool. It's a 2/2 resurrect deck and not that special at the end of the day. And you're right. So you really needed that massive quantity because whenever people were playing them, there was so little they were playing them. And for these to be valuable, specifically I'll say how Sid was using them, essentially they're a wall. I would clear someone out of the way to get to the opposing champion, and he just pops another Yamaduta in the way.
Yeah. Steve, I think this is much better at uncommon. Yeah, and I think even when you think about drafting, right? A lot of times a card that does not seem very playable and constructed, it accelerates in drafting. Or like you're still like, I want to get that as my rare in a draft pack. Even Primordial Force. Bash on that card a lot, but it's one of those cards that if you grab one of those in a draft, oh my goodness, they are so good. And the problem with the Yamaduta, or even Kabus, going back to earlier, you get those in the draft, you may skip it for an uncommon. Kabus, you probably wouldn't. You'd still probably grab the Kabus. But Yamaduta, if you got Yamaduta in the pack, and right beside it is... I don't know, what's a very solid uncommon? Gilda Baboon. The same pack. You might go for the Baboon, even in a draft. And the Yamaduta really only shines when you got enough of them that you can throw them away, very disposable pieces. All right. We're just ripping through these. All right. Of the ones we've presented so far, which ones are you most excited about? Which ones are were there any surprises so far? I'd love to hear from the community. The chat's a little shy. It's weird because I'm actually really excited. This is probably one of our most viewed live streams, so that's awesome. Thank you everyone who's here. But the chat's a little quiet. I got it right here on my screen. You can message. I'm reading everything, except for from Chris. Chris, I don't care about voice. Actually, as we're streaming, Chris sends me a text message. He's like, "After the stream, you gotta call me." And then I see that he's in the chat. We love you, Chris. We just, yeah. uh, all right. Next one. I'm actually, I 100% agree with this shift, but I'm a little bit on the surprise end because it feels like it was right in the first spot. So let's pull that up on screen.
Interesting.
So Lulu. The reason why I say it felt right on before was the fact that what it is a 4-chi 3/3. Like if you get rid of the ultimatum ability and just look at it purely at that, that's really exciting. And then the ultimatum, it puts into this fact that 80% of when it gets played, it's at least gonna hit for its 3. So you are paying 10 ore for 3 damage, wherever you put that. But people like, I get it. I played with it a lot to try to make it work. It didn't work. It just didn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with it. It just doesn't work. I know Steve, if he's still watching, he wants to make another Lulu deck. He's always he believes in Lulu. I've never seen it work though. I've just so, your best hope from it is it just deals 3 damage to your opponent, which you would say a 4-chi doing 3 damage is actually great value.
Yeah.
Like if that happens. But then it also has that extra downside if they have a summon that can pay the life, then it just did nothing. Well, it did 3 damage. It's always doing 3 damage, essentially.
Do you think there's a space for this in like Yamaduta, Lulu Kokore type of feel where if you can swarm your opponent, then drop enough of these to get them to a point where they're paying their health for it, and then if there's no other summons that died, then you could just start dropping out Yamadutas.
Yeah.
In the same spots. Like I'm thinking Epiphany, Lulu's, Yamadutas. That could be an interesting run.
Another card I don't know if I haven't seen anybody play it was has anybody done Necro Lulu deck?
Yeah, that I don't think I've seen that either. So
that'd be pretty interesting.
Now, do you think how do you feel about the fact that Lulu came into the set? Do you still think it exemplifies a good part, like a good enough reason to just be in the game?
My personal view, it's another one of those cards that I don't play, but where we talked about Epiphany, I don't play it, but I can see its power level. For Lulu, it's weird. Like I can look at it objectively, I can be like, all right, 4-chi, 3 damage, that's actually amazing. And it does not excite me at all. I don't know what it is about it. For me personally, it does nothing for me. But Steve's out there. It's for Steve.
Yeah. I think
that's what it is. Second edition, it's just for Steve. We made it just for Steve. That's
right on the back of the booster packs. It's like in dedication to Steve. But Steve's still alive. So in the chat, Yamaduta Swarm. Yes. So in particular, I think that deck that I was running, it was a Chasmodon deck with a lot of Yamadutas to, as long as you can keep Skeleton Warriors dying to core, then you can keep those gates open. As long as the gates open or the door is open for Resurrect, then Yamaduta is a very, very powerful summon because it is swift speed. You can drop it wherever you need it to be. So yeah, if you can get your hands on like 10 of them, they can definitely change the tempo of your deck a lot. Chris complaining always. I will read your comments when I decide to read your comments. Steve, no surprises so far. Each changes make sense. I believe in Lulu making it uncommon makes sense. I think it's a good card to include mainly because there's always people who want to try to be cheeky in their deck design. I think, yeah, that's the thing. If we only design cards that excited just me or Alex or just the game design team, I think we'll lose out on other players' kind of wants from the game.
For sure.
And for me, like, I designed Lulu. Yeah, it's my name on the bottom of that card. I love it, but it's a card I haven't really played a lot with. But I think the desire of it inside the game is really, really cool. Also, the lore behind it was a lot of fun. Lulu Kokore, I think it's the... in certain parts of Africa, Lulu Kokore is their version of the boogeyman. So it's kind of like Vishud's version of the boogeyman. If you're willing to conquer your own fears, then it just dies. But if you can't, then you have to deal with it. All right, next card up. Actually, this is a really interesting one because we've been seeing a lot of people, well, a lot of shifts in it for Future League. So Foresight of the Ancients. Shifting down to uncommon. It's not just Foresight. Actually, another one on here is Apo.
Yeah, we did miss Apo, didn't we?
Both of them, both of the cards that deal with the stack, we dropped down to uncommon from rare. And part of it was they're not being played a whole lot. Part of it is the reason why it was dedicated to the rare slot was because we were worried that the keyword stack would confuse too many players and hold players back from enjoying the game. So we didn't want it in their face too much. We just wanted to drop it into the concept. But majority of people picked up on it pretty quickly. And now moving it to uncommon, it means that players are going to have to learn what the stack is very early on into their journey of learning to play Genesis. So I'm excited about this being uncommon. Your thoughts, Alex?
I agree with you on those statements. Another, I think, just a basic point there is, ironically, they both Foresight and Epiphany came in the set before. They sort of switched positions, and it may just be the view of power at the time, because there was a fear of Foresight, but back in the Future League at that time, there wasn't fear of Epiphany. And now it's sort of done the reverse. Nobody really plays Foresight, and the fear of Epiphany is there. Now, maybe both of these are on equal footings, and it's just what your perception is at that time.
Yeah. Now, the thing that I'm really happy about is when Foresight was drafted, like, because it was a rare, we invested a little bit more into the artwork, and the artwork on the cards is so pretty. I love that artwork. It makes me happy. It's a good card. Darren asks, any changes to the libraries? I think that was a pretty big change. It's not in the set, is it?
I like more further implication. Which library are you talking about? Are you talking about Library of Sahas? Are you talking about Library's Gates? Are you talking about the show we're performing right now? Are we changing the show up?
Yeah, you got to be more specific, Darren. This is on you. All right, the next one we're throwing up. I'm actually really happy about this change. So we're been talking about a lot of cards that are going from like hovering between rares and the beta one.
The beta one?
I'm assuming Library of Sahas.
Okay, Libraries of Sahas.
So we've been hovering a lot with cards that are going from uncommon to rare, rare to uncommon. But this one is going from uncommon down to common. That's Stampeding Force. This makes me really happy because there's such a small niche deck that runs it, and it's so much fun to see that deck played. And I think more players should have access to the pieces to make this deck feasible.
I agree. It's definitely one of the
most fun?
Most fun? Well, one of the most fun decks out there, just stomping on people. It's a lot of fun. And it was too hard to get. Oh yeah, I've played it many times. Because there's a lot of ways to build it. and that's the other interesting part.
Mm-hmm.
You're always Thymos in one section,
Yeah.
but there's other ways to go about
How do you go about it
doing
with
what you
the
do.
other combination? So with chaos, because you need
Um,
flight, don't you?
well, you see, I live in Future League world, Sid. So
Oh, yeah. For us who live in the real world, you need flight and stampeding force. So you're playing with Fong, Long, or Erica. Um, I think Fong is one of the more entertaining champions for it. Uh, because of her energy reduction allows her to do things like jump, leap, and those cards a little bit more recklessly.
hmm.
And it's just you get the Mario effect. You're just stomping on Goombas all day long. Uh, yeah, I love the card. I don't think we actually expected anyone to build a deck around it. Uh, we designed it. We didn't do a lot of testing with it because Future League wasn't too excited about it, and we didn't have a lot of time on internal and to do any testing with it. So it passed all of our criteria as we pushed it through. We got to production and we're like, oh wait, this doesn't work unless you have flight. So really only one combination can play the card. And we're like, what are the odds anyone's actually gonna do it? It's so minor. And who was it? Ian came out and built the deck and just started stomping on all of us. And it was hilarious. I love it in multiplayer. All right. Yeah, we still have quite a few cards to go through. I think
Darren did say the Library of Sahas. I don't. Have we said the full card list for second edition? Have you put that online?
no, we
No.
haven't. But I
Although
want to
I think
always
Sid
reward the
spoiled that
people.
already.
I want to reward the people who come out and support us on the
Yeah.
channel. Like I've always gone above and beyond of spoiling extra stuff if you come to the live streams. Uh, call it an incentive to actually come to the live streams, but uh, I mean, I'm just a very talkative person.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So yes, Sid already answered it a bit earlier for you, but yes, libraries did not make the cut. I believe I did it. I swear we had this. Had a whole talk about this, Sid. How I feel like you were like, oh no, libraries has to be in the set. How did it get cut? I don't even remember now.
No, the thing was all the cycle of alterations, they didn't all make it. So if one wasn't gonna be in there, there's no need to force the other ones to be in there. So there were 10 alterations, no, 8 alterations in J Lara, and if you look at them, like Inferno Pits, and so Inferno Pits is chaos. So Thymos would be, uh, what would Thymos be? What were the two in Thymos? Firehill and oh, why am I blanking on this? This is so bad. All right, let's take Vadhis for example, because I can't remember the other Thymos alteration. But for Vadhis in Bellum, you had walls of Vadhis, and in Axon you had the cathedrals of Vadhis. So the idea was in those two colors, you'd see those two champions on different alterations, showing different parts of the city. So every every affiliation had two alterations. One alteration was for one city, and one alteration was for the other. So like Haunted Catacombs has Kendra on it, and then Libraries of Sahas had Rain on it. We didn't keep a lot of them going into second edition.
Yeah.
So the ones we kept were just ones that were functionally good, and that was another part about designing second edition was it was it's a set that's designed to be functionally good, be healthy for the game state, and healthy for the growth of the game, compared to a set that's fulfilling some bigger story arc or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
We wanted specifically, I don't think we've ever said this, it's like if new players were to get into the game now, it helps them be on the equal footing as older players getting into the game.
Yeah.
Get the pieces you need, cut through a lot of the stuff that older players don't use, so new players wouldn't use them either.
Yeah. And then there were a lot of cards that were like, it's a trap. You think it's a much better card than it really is.
Yeah.
And then people waste a lot of time trying to design around them. So we cut those cards or we put them off to other projects.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, the next one on the list, Brook Naga. Um, what do we have to say about this one? Like, give me your reasoning. Why did you want to shift this down to uncommon?
Just nobody plays it. And I think that's just it. I don't think I've seen any interest from a single soul. I think I built the Brook Naga deck once. I think I played against you actually.
Okay.
Have you ever seen anybody else play it?
No.
That's it. It's fine. It's an okay summon. It's got decent. It's got the right stats to where it wants to be for a 6 GF 4 forward solid.
Mm-hmm.
But it just doesn't. It doesn't excite. It doesn't go that extra step. I think to be the rare that people want to pull in the pack.
Yeah, I think the synergy was really what was missing off of it. Its ability would fizzle too often that, uh, and that was the thing. When your opponent paid the 3 energy, you didn't think of it as like, hey, this is a win. My opponent paid 3 energy. You're like, oh, my ability fizzled.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think for anyone who plays Future League, you'll know that the future of this card is definitely going to seem brighter. But in the current state, it and that's the thing. We shouldn't promote cards to be rares now, just because we know that the future of this card's gonna be better. The card's rarity should be based off of this game state at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing to decide. Now, the reason why I made it rare, actually, some of that did come from that deck you played, because I did see that if people play this in mass, when you're getting hit by 3 Brook Nagas, you already took 12 damage, and then you're looking at the fact that you're going to be paying like 9 energy if you're a caster. It hurts. It hurts a lot. So that was part of the reason why I pushed this up to a rare. Now, a funny story I have is, for those who are watching and don't know, we are slowly getting a following in Europe, in Germany in particular. There's this one YouTuber called his name's Henning. He creates content for a store in Germany called Yoda's Data, which I think is just an awesome name for a store. So when he first got the game, he was playing around with the pieces and opening up packs and comparing artwork and stuff like that. He was like, he was critiquing the artwork of the game. And this is something we hear quite often. Genesis artwork isn't at the same caliber as a lot of our competitors, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're still a young budding company and we're doing the best we can. But he was comparing, he's like, you get some packs that have just the most amazing art, and then he was like, I opened up a pack and got Brook Naga, and I didn't know anything about the game, but just looking at that artwork, it was gorgeous, and I was so excited. And I opened my next pack and got a Sadistic Illusion, and I was like, what is this artwork? And then he was like, then I opened my third pack and I got an epic Sadistic Illusion. And it was so sad. So good. Fun times, fun times. All right.
So we're setting up Sadistic Illusion promos, right?
Yeah. Foiled Sadistic with a store stamp and everything. The exclusive Sadistic Illusion. It's more zoomed up, but also blurrier. Like it's pixelated. Oh, that'd be so good. Be so good. All right. Next one we already saw spoiled in last week's versus Dax. Mystical Spear, that used to be a rare, now an uncommon. And we actually had someone ask us about this. Like, the starter kits have a lot of cards in there that used to be rares. What's the sentiment behind that? I think this card, it got its rare status because of its uniqueness and cost.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't have been the case. It was the wrong reason to give it a rare. So dropping it to uncommon, I think now what it does is it opens the doors for players to try to become more comfortable with the idea that cards could have an or cost.
Hmm. I agree. It's also one of those cards that I just think didn't see enough play just because it was a rare. Because people didn't have enough of them to build a deck around it. Because it has a very unique awareness. So I think you need to have a deck that focuses on dealing damage at that farther area. So you either need a bunch of these or other sport cards that go with these. And just as a rare, you only have a lot of them.
Like, I remember I was talking to people about my long holy deck, and this was just during that small window of time last summer when stores were open up and people could play with each other. But uh, and Rays had just come out, and I was talking about making a long holy deck. And I was like, finally, I can use these mystical spear. I remember talking to someone. They're like, "Wait, what is that? This card?" I'm like, "It was from Welcome to JLR." It's like I've never seen it before. Like that's a little ain't like shouldn't be the case. Just a little bit. But yeah, like it does work really well if you're playing a summoner deck where you want to be behind your summons all the time. Like your summons are, you're dropping things like the Archon of Vigor, needs you, or Guardian of Balance right in front of you, and then you're just tossing spears over the summons.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things because people could not get their hands on enough copies of them. It didn't see enough play. Do you think it will see more play now? Like,
I
what do
think
you
I
think
lost
this?
you there for a second.
Oh,
Sorry. I think it was your question. Do you think you'll see? Do I think it will see more play? Uh, Now, I think perhaps with the follow up set, I think there are some interesting champions who like that awareness.
that's true. That's true. I think the game is gonna open up a lot more uh, as more sets come out. But I do think even with champions like Raha on the Archer side and the whatchamacallit, Long or Nubia on the Summoner side, it still has a lot of merit behind it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. Now we're getting into some bit more of the more niche cards. Let's talk about the Jin. You so for people who are watching, you don't know how badly Alex did not want this card in the set. There's a lot of cards that, if it was up to Alex, this card would not be in the set. But it was me. It was
So
me.
let's talk about Bellum and Rays. When it came to Bellum and Rays, have a great day. You'll notice that a lot of the Bellum Rays cards are the ones that came down a bit. But this one in particular, if there was a card I think I fought the most about to not be a rare and Rays, was it this card?
There
I'm
were a
trying to think if
few
it
of them.
was.
There were definitely a few of them.
There was a few of them, but for this one in particular, I think I was like, it does nothing. This literally does nothing. It doesn't progress your game state. I was so adamant that I'm pretty sure you went out and you're like, I'm gonna start building decks with this card to prove you wrong.
So that's the thing. I have built decks that I found very enjoyable, that did take advantage of them and did get my opponent to a state where they were frustrated having to deal with it. It is a good control card. It's just control as a concept in Genesis is not what you would want it to be in a normal game. And that's where this card kind of got confusing when it came to its rarity, because definitely playtesting it, there's a lot of moments where it was an MVP in the game. And you're like, oh, it merits being rare because you don't need a lot of them. You just need to play a few of them very calculated compared to playing, a whole bunch of them and just spamming your opponent. But
Yeah.
it's weird. It's not for everyone.
Well, and then we could go to the side route and talk about that. There wasn't enough support to go with Pacify.
Yes.
Like if there is like an outcome or goal with Pacify, but Pacify was just the end goal. You were pacified. Yeah. And that may have been what was also holding it back just a little bit.
Yeah. There was no lead up. There was no finisher for Pacify. It was very much a let's stall the state of the game. And so Yeah, I 100% agree, and that's part of the reason
Yeah.
why when you and I sit down to talk about future mechanics, like don't try to spend a lot of time on Pacify. I don't think it was built up to be the right mechanic. Now in the future, who knows? We can have there might be that light bulb moment where Pacify we could put something together and it just is amazing, but not right now. Darren in the chat says casually sleeving my mystical spears. Uh, yeah, I think there definitely will be a home for mystical spears.
Yeah.
Soon enough.
Yeah.
Even before Origins comes out, I think the fact that it drops so uncommon, just there's a lot of cards in the game because of the way deck design is, and the fact that you can run so many copies of cards. Certain cards hit a particular tipping point that if you have this many copies or more, then the card becomes phenomenal, or becomes like maybe not phenomenal, but becomes really good.
Yeah.
And people could not get enough copies of those cards to enjoy the value of them. So the value of those cards plummet, right? So Mystical Spear on this, like just trading it or getting it on the secondary market, it might be very much on the low end, but once you have enough of them, they do become a pretty decent threat because they
Yeah.
can shift which cost you use for them.
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
fair.
We have enough time for one or two more. If you're in the chat and you want to know about a specific card, feel free to ask. We'll see if we'll address it. But if it's on our list of things, if you can guess a card that's rarity got shifted, then we will confirm that for you. All right, but this next one I definitely want to throw up. Battle Cry.
They have a few guests in the background, but don't worry about that. Battle Cry. I think Battle Cry is an easy one to talk about. We've actually talked about it before, I think. Hi, buddy. That was a good Battle Cry. Thank you for chiming in at the right time. Love you. We talked about it ironically. There was a secret exploring the libraries a while back where we were like talking about cards from all the sets and what would we change about the old sets. That was the start of us working on second edition. And we talked about Battle Cry a lot and what you would have changed with it. And there's a lot of things about it. It's like this would be much better at a lower chi. Just the fact that it requires you to play the ability, weirdly enough, cuts out a bunch of attacks. There's just a lot of small things that made this just slightly worse than it could have been. Yeah. And that's why it's just going down one.
Yeah, it's a card that unfortunately in a lot of my decks, I end up cutting. I'll start off with my initial deck design and have, 5 copies of them, and then after one gameplay, I'm like, okay, I'll pull out one to put in another giant scorpion. I'll pull out one to put in another 6 sheet. And I keep on pulling them, and then eventually I don't have any. But the thing is, when you are successful with it, it is very rewarding. It is a really good feeling when you can hit for that extra amount, feeling like as a champion, I'm still getting involved in that combat, boosting my allies' attack up. Plus, I love the little niche parts about the artwork because you got that Death Eater in the background, the Pyre Wad in the background, which the Pyre showed up in beta, and then we turned it into a card in J, and then we use this artwork here. Like all these little things about it that are really nice. But at the end of the day, it just it couldn't do what you exactly were looking for. I think at uncommon, it's reasonable now, though. And the big reason I don't want to pull it is because I also think that it's a good budget card to have in certain decks. When you don't have the rares you're looking for, you don't have all the pieces you need, you're making an Idris Titan deck, and you don't have enough giant scorpions, this is a good option at that slot. So I wouldn't dismiss it completely, but because it is your budget option, that's the big reason why it shouldn't be a rare.
Yeah, I agree.
Will saying excited to have this game played in person again. Yes, I am very excited to do that. I don't know, like I know. So Alex and I went off to Quebec to do the proofing for second edition, and we brought our cards. We had a complete intention to sit down and play, and then as we were leaving, I was like, "Yep, this is why I haven't played a game of Genesis in so long." Because every time I sit down to do anything, it's like, "Oh yeah, I gotta work. I gotta run this company." I just don't get the opportunity. The Queen of Squirrels. Gabe has input. Yes, we should really have like a Q&A with Gabe and like be like, okay,
How has Genesis affected your life?
yeah, what is the thing you're most excited about in the next set? All right, one last card.
Oops, I just removed one card. Yeah, let's do that next one. I think that's a good
I
one.
think that's that's a very
Because
good
this one calms you.
one. It calms me.
You don't get the reference. Our next card is Galad Baboon. You'll see it in a lot of Sid's images.
Yeah.
Because one day when we were going over the cards, he was just staring at the art and he went, "This card calms me." And I went, "What? This is an angry monkey. What are you talking about?" And he's just staring at the one tree in the background of the art.
Oh my goodness.
But joking aside,
yeah.
This card is amazing. It's one of my, I was gonna say top picks from Rays. I play it a lot actually. Yeah. In any of the aggro decks, the Idris aggro decks. It was my budget for, I'm forgetting the name, Rock Throwing Monkey. Formosan. It is the budget to that. The budget version. And I've argued with a few people saying that it might even be slightly better just because it saves you 5 aura to do that extra fireball. Mm-hmm. But it's very close. The challenge is you still got to kill angels and it can't do that. Very powerful card. So easy fits.
And now, okay, let's first talk about what the shift happened for people who don't know. So from Rays, this went from uncommon down to common. Not only is it common, we're giving you like 6 of them, I think, in the Versus starter kit. We want these very accessible. And I think it's actually a huge compliment to say that we're this is one of those cards where it's a huge compliment that we're shifting it down. Because of the fact that we want more players with this card in the deck. We want people to say, this is my MVP, and I have enough of them that I can constantly keep you updated. Because the Idris Blitz stack is definitely a fearsome deck. So I think that's a really good shift. Now, part of the reason why I didn't make this common to begin with is because of Blitz. How do you feel about the fact that we're taking such a strong mechanic and bringing that down in rarity?
I think at the end of the day, fine, as long as we believe that Blitz should exist in Genesis. If Blitz is a fair ability within Genesis, the rarity at the end of the day isn't necessarily tied to Blitz. Yeah.
I think so. That's a really good answer. The way I look at it, and it very much in the same vein, is that it always comes back to this one decision, which is we should not be making decisions that are harmful to the game. We always got to keep the game's best interest in heart. And a lot of the times, even if it is a more complex ability or more powerful ability, putting that card at higher rarity, making it less accessible to the players, does make the gameplay experience a little bit more painful. And that's something we don't want to do. So a lot of these cards, there were some cards that we actually debated dropping from rare all the way down to common because it was just a healthier thing to do. But I think a lot of times when we were coming down to that decision, we just cut that card from the set. Because if it's dropping down that much, it's because, there's usually not a lot of positive things to say about the card. But yeah, I think Gelder Baboon definitely. I am excited to see more people play with this card. And maybe it'll transition more people to getting excited about Brooks. All right. I think that should wrap it up here. Any last thoughts? I know so there's a bunch of cards that we didn't actually get through. Do we want to kind of just rattle those off, or do we want to just leave them as a surprise? We'll
Doesn't
leave it
matter to
as a
me.
surprise.
It is a
We'll leave
surprise.
it as a surprise. Yeah, I think a lot of the rarity shifts were very healthy. There was one thing that was kind of makes me a little bit on the sad side that we didn't do this, which was we should have gotten more input from the community about shifting rarities, or
Hmm.
just trying to consult people. The big reason why we didn't, and it's not because we don't like that process, so we're trying to cut that process. We are trying to advocate and work within the process. It was just a time constraint.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had to get the files off to manufacturing as soon as possible, and the turnaround time to do things properly with the community, it's just we wouldn't have been able to do it in time. Also, the other value that we had, though, that we've seen all these cards played on a competitive level.
Yeah.
Even we, I know Rays came out during COVID, so we didn't get to sit down and play with it. But there's been a lot of tabletop simulator tournaments with Rays. We've seen the cards that have kind of been pushed off. Will is doing an amazing job with Meta Mondays and exploring all those cards, all the combinations. So I think we did get a pretty good sense of what were good decisions, what were poor decisions when it came to the rarity spectrum. Uh, so, yeah, I'm excited to see just how second edition is received. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Um, some kind of last thoughts. So yesterday, Alex and I had a chat with a streamer named Bronson. He's going to be putting out a video soon from that chat. It was a lot of fun. We got to talk about way more than just the game itself. We talked about
Yeah.
manufacturing. We talked about what it's like to work as a team. What is it like to design the game? Those were really, really fun conversations. So look forward to that. And also, King Nub put out some videos today. So go check him out. And then, yeah, next week we are talking about
Organized play, I think.
play. And
And not the organized play we talked about before. I think our actual organized play kits.
yeah, we're talking about specifically what we are doing for organized play. What is our plan? How we're gonna roll it out? How we're gonna work with the stores? Hopefully, we can even spoil off some of the stuff we've been working
I think that's what we're doing, because we did that chat already. We did our organized play chat, right?
Well, last time we talked about organized play as a holistic thing within the industry. Now we're going to talk specifically about what we're doing. So our guidelines. We can talk about the judge program. We can talk about how organized play is going to roll out, along with the organized play kits. I don't know if we're going to go about spoiling everything in the organized play kits or what it is.
Mm-hmm.
We still have to decide about that. But if we're lucky, we might even be able to do a walkthrough of Geo. And
that's true.
So who knows what will be in store for next week. A lot can happen between now and then. But we will definitely give a really, really good experience. So, just to wrap this up, thank you everyone for coming out, watching, and participating, and having a great conversation in the chat. And we will talk to you. Well, I got my presentation on Friday, so join me on Friday. But if you don't, then we'll see you next week. Bye.
Have a good one, guys. Bye.